Welcome back, everyone, to part 4 of our video game book club, which is part 4 of Metal Gear Solid, the OG, kind of, the PlayStation 1 game. I can't wait to turn...
Not kind of, it is.
It is.
Well, I mean, there was... Wait, but there was Metal Gear Solid before this game.
Nope, there's Metal
No.
Gear.
Metal Gear.
F!
Gear 1 and 2, then Metal Gear Solid.
All right. F, fair enough. Okay. So this is a question I've never asked then. Was this a turning point for the whole franchise then?
I would say,
Yeah.
Yeah, like they kind of went from whatever that was to...
Top
People,
down,
there was
yeah.
not a single person. I mean, I'm sure there were people that were fans. It was an old NES game that played like an NES game. It was just that people did not know really or care about Metal Gear until Metal Gear Solid.
Okay. All right. Well, Christian, then take us through part 4. There's a lot. I played it. Oh, when did you
Lot of
when did you
story.
play it? I played it today. When did you all
I
play
played it last night.
I
was
meant to
up
play
a
it
little
last
later than
night
I
and
thought.
just...
I
Did
played
it
it last. I played it on Saturday or Sunday.
You played on Sunday,
I play
you
it
talked about it
offline
after
on
you played
Steam
it
Deck.
last
That way, I
Friday.
don't mess up anybody who wants to
Yeah,
play it.
you played
so.
Sunday.
That's good. Can I say that's good because like it's fresh for Preston and I,
Yes.
and Christian, of course you did the notes and you played it before. Can I clarify something? This was said in part 2, I believe. After our Vulcan Raven fight, we were talking about using the mine detector, and
Can't
Christian,
pick up mines.
I found out this week how to pick up mines.
Oh, did
Yeah,
you?
you just lay on it. Yeah, you crawl over them.
You
Yeah,
have to
it was
crawl
like
All
mine
over them?
detector-
Jesus
Yeah,
Christ.
I was gonna clarify, Preston, for you because I found out today you have to crouch, and when you crawl, and I did it accidentally because I kept getting blown up trying to walk beside one. I was like, this is stupid. I was like, I'm just gonna crawl, and when I crawled, it disappeared and went. Wait a minute, let me try that again. And I crawled on another. It's like to inventory, and I was like, so Christian was right. You do auto deactivate, but he did not clarify. You have
Yeah,
to.
I misspoke. Yes, I should have
Crawl
clarified and
over
said-
them.
Yes, yeah. You
And
just
yes,
crawl over 'em.
there you go, Preston. So I
I got-
wanted
So
to.
you have to have the mine detector
Yes.
out, and then you just crawl over them, and then you
I
go.
just
Yeah.
I just wanted to
No.
circle back and vindicate you from 3 weeks ago.
And now it's
when we
probably
were
not
talking
going to
about-
matter at all. But okay.
No, I'm sure not.
No.
So anyway, take us through it.
Would have been nice.
Yeah. So we pick up from after the Sniper Wolf fight, so when we are done. What, Preston?
The first Sniper Wolf fight.
Yep. They don't know that yet, so we'll get there. But yes.
Spoilies
clarify.
over here.
Right. Yeah. So after the Sniper Wolf fight, and we are we think that we killed her, and so we start running down the hallway, and we find out that we are in fact wrong about the fact that we killed her. We get ambushed and knocked out after listening to Sniper Wolf's little victory speech about how she always gets her target and blah 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 blah. And she has a soldier knock us out, and we wake up in some sort of operating room where we listen to Liquid Snake be completely dramatic about how we need to pay for what's been stolen from him, and how he is the brother of dark and we're the brother of light. And he also goes on a little bit more about their plan, about how he needs Snake's DNA. And he also, on top of that, needs Big Boss's DNA, which is why their demands include getting the remains of Big Boss, or they're going to fire a bunch of nukes. And as he's sort of musing about how this, we've taken everything from him and all of this other dramatic shit, he gets a call from some soldiers who talk about how they're having more trouble with Gray Fox, who continues to go around this entire base just causing complete mayhem and killing people. And so he says that he's going to leave and go do that. And as he's getting ready to leave, Ocelot makes a comment that we are awake. And so they start, putting us down to get ready for the questioning. And Liquid says that he's going to go take off and start dealing with this. And right before the fun gets started with Ocelot, Sniper Wolf walks up to us and lets us know that Meryl is in fact still alive. and that she doesn't know for how long, but she says that we'll see her later. And then she go ahead and says that she's going to go deal and hang out with her little wolf family. She pieces out, and Ocelot gets ready to quote unquote interrogate us. And he starts off by calling us carrier boy, which would make no sense to anybody. But I do think this is just a mental note for everybody here. Keep that one tucked in here that we got called carrier boy, and you just remember that.
It's
okay.
It'll be gone after this week.
All
That's
leads up
fine.
to delivery jobs in Death Stranding. Yeah, I get
Yep, that's exactly.
Yeah.
You just keep thinking
Cool.
that. That's exactly what it is. Yeah, and so, but
Spoiler: the baby is Solid Snake that
Yeah,
you carry
yeah.
around.
yeah, it's actually funny. So we didn't. It's because we're not doing like a news thing, but the Death Stranding pre-order trailer, the Death Stranding 2 pre-order trailer dropped, and there is a character that looks exactly like Solid Snake.
Which Kojima posted on social media a couple years ago. He said that he would love to have him play Solid Snake, that very actor. So
Yes, so
take that what
it's
you
clear.
will.
It's clear Kojima's not over it, and he's still ready to do whatever. So who knows? Anyway, so he goes and he calls us carrier boy. Then he starts asking us some questions about the card key that we got from Meryl, as well as the optical disc that we got from the president. And he says that if we want to make it through this torture, that we should get on with answering his questions. And he says, by the way, if you give up during any of this torture, that he'll kill Meryl. And there's also a little bit of like fourth wall stuff here, where one of the famous lines from this game is that Ocelot says, there is no continues here, my friend, meaning like you can't fail, like you just die. He also says that if you use turbo mode on your controller, I'll know that you're cheating, which is hilarious. But in the middle of this torture, towards the end of it, Ocelot says that he believes that we are clearly related to Liquid because we are handling this really well, and he says that Liquid is an amazing man who he believes is the only person that can make his dream a reality. And then as soon as he finishes saying that, we fade out and we wake up in the jail cell. And when we are back in the jail cell, we are immediately greeted with the body of the DARPA chief, who is already rotting away, has like maggots all over him and all this other shit. And we immediately get a call from Campbell, who Snake immediately starts in on, is like, hey, motherfucker, cut all the bullshit. Like, I'm tired of you lying to me. You knew that they had you knew that there was a new nuclear weapon being developed here. You knew the whole time, and you knew that that's what they had their hands on. So, why didn't you tell me? And he's like, he says that he was sorry and that he wasn't allowed to say anything, and that he says that only the president just found out about it yesterday. And he's like, okay, well, if you know that they have this, then why not just give in to their fucking demands and give them Big Boss's body? Like, who gives a fuck? And Naomi butts in and says that that's not something that can happen, because having a genome, an army basically created out of eugenics, would look bad for the president, on top of all of the nuclear shenanigans going around here. And so they're like, our only option is to stop them and cover this whole thing up. Like, we can't let any of this see the light of day. And so as they start to formulate a plan about getting the other two keys to stop Rex from launching the nukes, we get off the phone with them, we call Otacon, and we ask him to show up and help us get out of the cell, because he has that fancy new camo suit. And Otacon says he will help us, and that we just need to hang out. And while we're waiting for him, the guard walks up and says, hey, Ocelot's ready to see you again, so let's go. So they drag us back in for a second round of torture. And afterwards, Ocelot sort of gives us a little bit more background on him. So he talks about the different special forces that he's trained with and different stuff like that. And he also lets us in about what his ultimate goal and why he's here with Foxhound. And it's because he believes that after this new, after all these threats and everything are done, and the body of Big Boss gets delivered to Liquid, Russia is going to purchase all of this technology from Liquid, and then that will help them rebuild Russia and be reborn. And so that's what Ocelot's main sort of goal is here. And as soon as we get that information, we are taken back to our cell, and we get a call from Naomi here, who gives us a little bit of fourth wall healing. So this is something that only works if you're not playing on a Steam Deck, because the vibration isn't very strong on the Steam Deck. But I think
weak, yeah.
Yeah, I think everybody can understand what was happening, especially since we all know how violently those old controllers used to vibrate way back in the day. So this mini game, and I was waiting for you to talk about it, but this torture mini game is basically there's a time bar at the bottom of your health, and that's going down for the amount of the amount of time that damage is going to be done to you, and your health is, as you mash the B button, you're basically fighting back the damage that's being done to you, and your goal is by the end of the torture to still have, any amount of life left. Mashing the button for that long obviously could make your arm feel tense, feel tight, whatever. And so she tells you to put the controller against your arm, and then it vibrates a bunch. And she's like, well, there, see, I stimulated the nanomachines in your arm to make it feel better, and blah, blah, blah. And it's one of those things, I think, again, if you weren't playing on Steam Deck and it was back then, you, especially as, like, if you're, younger, you're like, damn, this dude is just, like, the immersion is just happening all over the place. Like, they're really trying to get you to buy into all of this stuff between the Psycho Mantis stuff and that. I think this obviously still holds up better than the Psycho Mantis fight because people use muscle massagers today. Yeah. So it would be achieving the same sort of idea. But throughout that conversation, she moves on about how we get some background. Well, her and Campbell give us some background on what happened between Snake and Big Boss back in Zanzibar, and then Naomi gets like really offended that we killed Big Boss because she was like, "But that's your dad. Like, it's patricide." And he's like, whatever. He was the enemy, and also he asked me to do it. So, like, them's the breaks, I guess." And
that dialogue wasn't as natural as you just said either. She was like, killing a father as a son, that's patricide. I was like, well, thank you for the definition.
The definition,
before you said it, like, that was great.
But then it's funny because the Snake responds with like, but he asked for it. Like,
yeah.
Also, it's my dad. So
didn't randomly just want to kill my dad. There was probably a reason for it.
So then they move on to, he basically, asked for Naomi, and it's another weird line where he's like, Naomi, you got to give me something. Like, talk to me, take my mind off this shit. Like, give me something here. And him talking about how he had to kill Big Boss opens up about her background, where she basically says that she had no family outside of a big brother who put her through school. And then she asks if Snake has had any women or friends in his life, and he says the only people that he has in his life were Campbell and Gray Fox. And he goes on to explain that he still feels like Gray Fox and Gray Fox are still friends even now. But the only interaction they had outside of when he was when he freed, and we also get introduced to Gray Fox's real name, which is Frank Yeager. But he says that he found Frank Yeager in one of the prison cells in Outer Haven, and he rescued him from there. That's when Frank ended up going to be one of the more trusted lieutenants for Big Boss, but he stayed with him, and he said that it was just like they never held any ill will to each other when they were fighting on opposite sides of a conflict. It's just what happened. But before that, they had trained together.
I don't know if it was there or later. They say the Gray Fox was the only person in the entire group to like attain the title of Fox.
Mm-hmm. It's right after. So he says that he was training him, and like Snake is forever indebted to him because he was training him while he was green. He learned a lot about what he knows from Gray Fox, and then that's when Campbell pipes in and says that He was Big Boss's most trusted lieutenant, and he was the only other person to attain the status of like the codename Fox.
So then, do these animals actually matter? Like Vulcan, Raven, Solid Snake, Gray
their
Fox?
their code names in so yes, as far as their code names are like signifying where they're at, as part of like that upper echelon, like the special forces, like echelon or whatever.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so then Snake ends up asking her like what got her into genetic research in the first place. Naomi says that she had no parent, or she didn't know her parents, and so the reason she got into genetic research in the first place was because she wanted to try and use that information to figure out who her parents were, what they looked like, any of that information. And she also says that it would help her learn like who they are, why they did what they did, like all this other stuff. And the Snake was like, well, you can't know that just by looking at somebody's DNA. And he was like, my DNA, can you tell my future? And then she pauses, stays silent, and says, no, sorry, I don't know. And he goes, right, because you're just a scientist, you're not a fortune teller. Along with Carrier Boy, just keep that tucked away. Anyways.
She also said that memories are stored in your fucking DNA. So.
Yeah, it's so funny. It's like the most...
The Mei-Ling dialogue you get later on,
yeah. That's the Mei-Ling dialogue
What's
later
that?
on.
Okay.
But yeah, there's some stuff that's just like, I don't. Yeah, it's like Kojima loves trying to weave in like, he has this commentary and like story about the military industrial complex and like different things, and then he's just like, but also anime. Like he just like weaves it in where he's just like anime.
The existential conversations you would have like in college, like that level of quality of writing as far as like, ideals and stuff like that. Like, man, memories can't be stored in data. Like it turns into numbers, so it's not real. And just that kind of shit.
Yeah. That is sort of what it feels like for sure. But yeah, so we finish up with that conversation, and luckily, we start to notice that the guard that's watching us ends up having some tummy problems, and he has to run away. And right when he does that, our hero in invisible armor shows up, and Otacon gives us a couple different ways that we can escape here. So he gives us a bottle of ketchup that we can use. There's two ways, the easiest ways to get out of here. So the goal is that we're trying to cause a scene before the guard comes back so that we can lure them into the cell by opening the door and getting us so that we have a chance to get the drop on them. You can do that one of two ways. You can either you can use the bottle of ketchup while you're laying down on the ground, and when you use it, a bunch of red stuff will pool under you, looking like blood. That will make the guard obviously run in and come get you. The other option is you can hide under the bed, and then the guard will come out, think that you've escaped, open the door, then you, haha, surprise, you grab them and you're good to go. And you have those are the two different options there. If you don't get either of those, you'll get yanked away for another round of torture and then brought back. And then I believe it's Campbell or Otacon, it's one of the two, but they'll call you and just give you the answer and tell you that you need to do one of those two things. So
I tried to do the ketchup, and it didn't work. Like, I got on the ground, and I hit the ketchup, and it just disappeared out of my inventory and made a noise, but no red showed up, and then the guard didn't react. So I ended up doing under the bed. But, yeah, I don't know what happened with the ketchup one.
Weird. You can't move, so I don't know if you moved. If you moved, it breaks it, but you just have to sit, and then it'll just start to pool under you. That's the way that I did it, and it worked for me. But so I'll pause. I guess I'll pause there just because there's like we were saying, there's a lot of story in here. But you break out of jail, you start, and your idea is that you're going to make your way back to where you were to continue going through the base to look for those other cards. So yeah, what was going on up until this point?
So I ended up doing that torture spot 3 times because I just was kind of confused about it. It made it they did tell me, but they kind of were at first vague about what you should do.
Yeah.
I had no idea what to do with the ketchup. I found the ketchup thing out later on when I was looking at the guide, just to kind of see what I wouldn't have missed. But yeah, I ended up just going under the bed because I thought that maybe you would be able to sneak out, like through like a vent or something like that under the bed. So I checked that in the first time. Like, okay, well, there's no way to sneak out. All you can do is annoy the guy. And then once he goes running away, I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to go under the bed, see what happens. And of course, he's like, oh, he escaped. And he comes in, and I start to fight him off a little bit. And then he ends up somehow running out of the door before I could finish him off. So that would be a fourth torture scene I had to do. So I'm sitting there loving the mashies on the B button. Luckily, I'm on easy, so it's not as bad. But I'm still like, I'm holding the back of my Steam Deck, and my thumb is like this with the B button. I'm like, like just sitting there fucking mashing it. Teddy's like sitting in my lap. He's like, what the fuck are you doing? But yeah, I ended up getting out the fourth time, just fine. You got to. When I got out of the bed, I wanted to get out of the narrow part of the bed because then the guard's looking at the bed and doesn't really exactly notice you at first. So I was able to get behind him before he got to the door. But yeah, that seemed to be good. I mean, there are some parts of that story that are still hitting that cringe moment, but luckily it's not as bad here. So I did enjoy like this section of the story a little bit more than I have earlier parts.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did the
in this section there wasn't anything that's like anybody
Nothing
says
too
that's
hard.
like
I mean,
fucking weird. Yeah.
I wouldn't say cringe. I wouldn't use cringe for like, oh, make sure you press the B button to heal your health, and you have no continues, Snake. Like that was like, okay, whatever. But you also have the typical evil villain thing to where he tells you his plan, and for some reason he's just gonna let you know that all your equipment's right there next to the torture chamber as well.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Yeah. I failed the torture scene because I saw. So I did this last week.
What happened?
Just this part. Oh, I saw in the guide that if you don't successfully complete this, you get the bad ending. So I set my controller down and just let it happen.
See what happened.
Same thing happens. You leave and you come back for a second round of torture because I think the game wants to give you like a second chance at it. And then
It does not. No.
No. Okay.
I mean, like you like no matter what you did, that first one is the
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but both of them, I just set it down. So the rest of the stuff happened like normal. But I want to see how it's different. Christian and I talked about it for a minute.
Okay.
We'll see when we get
So you're
there.
gonna get the quote unquote bad ending.
The quote unquote
so-
bad ending. Yeah.
So Meryl
Preston, you didn't fail
died.
one, so you and I will get the same ending, and Alex will get a different one.
So according to the
Yeah.
rules
If
of the
I-
dialogue,
yeah.
according to the rules
Huh?
of dialogue, Meryl should have been killed because you did not succeed.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So I thought it was funny, like when you come out of that in your call, you're like, "Oh, I saw Liquid," and they're like, "What do you look like?" or something, and he was like, "He looks just like me, but with blonde hair," and I was like. I mean, yeah, sure. I can't tell. It's like fucking PS1 polygons. Like,
Well,
I
so that's why.
can't tell.
That's why.
White guy.
That's why I had you guys look at the briefing and stuff before because they are like it shows when you watch like the briefing videos and stuff. It shows the two things, and they are the same person. That's why Snake dyes his hair.
Yeah.
In this one, but yeah,
It was just funny when they say it. You're like, I mean, I guess, sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, like this part was fine. I tried the ketchup thing. Like I said, the ketchup thing didn't work for me, and it made the noise and it left my inventory. It just didn't work. And then I started crawling around because I couldn't figure out how to get out. And the guard happened to be walking around. And when he got to the backside, I guess I just got under the bed. So when he came back to the middle, it was like da da da, and he comes running in. I jump out and I beat him down. Unlike Preston, I threw him, but I didn't just stand in there wait for him to get up. I ran out the door, and then he followed me out the door, and I knocked him out outside, and I was outside, so then it was okay.
Yeah.
Plan. Yeah.
The Otakon thing cracked me up because he runs over and he is like he makes a comment and Snake's like, oh, the guy's dead in the corner sort of thing. And Otakon, like, his animation, he leans up and twists his head through the windows of the door to, like, see the dead guy in the corner. But, like, the entire wall is nothing but windows. He could have easily just looked to his right and been like, oh, yeah, I see him. Like, I just saw it right there. there's also a part coming up here in a minute that I thought was really funny. Like, as Otacon is walking around invisible all over this base, he just happens to let us know that, like, you could have had this tech, but you don't for reasons that we're going to find out in a minute, which kind of answers my question, like,
Why couldn't he give you one?
Why
Yeah.
didn't give us one? But you also could have just answered that, like, back then.
Or why he didn't
Yeah.
ask for it? Yeah, earlier. Yeah.
Well, he says.
Whatever.
Well, there's a little bit of dip, but yeah, we'll get there. Yeah, so, but yeah, so we get done with that part, and we are making our way towards the communication tower, which is where we were headed originally. So we get back to where we had that fight with Sniper Wolf, and we get a very dramatic flashback to what happened with Meryl, except this time with like very operatic music and different things. I also wanted to say, at this part, for like the sound design and the music and stuff, obviously it, like, some of this stuff transcends the game and it's very iconic. Like, you know, the Metal Gear, like when you get found out, and like the alert music, and
Allie
also
heard-
like the ba-ding, like
Allie heard that, and
the
she was
exclamation
like,
point.
That sounds so old. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, but it's like you know, like, some of that stuff is like, I think it transcends this game. Like, everybody knows what that song is, even if you've never played Metal Gear before. But I think a lot of this music still holds up. I think it still hits the same notes that they wanted to hit.
Can I ask you, before we go further here, because when we get here, we're going to be locked into the stairway sequence. Did anybody go back and backtrack now that you had the level 6 door key?
I think this is where you can go back a little bit to get the rope. And that's
So-
it.
No.
so
So
you
I
can
went back
go
and
back-
got two
yeah, so-
things.
I did, because I saw in the guide, it's like, hey, you should backtrack to get this, which is the body armor you can get.
Right,
and
yes,
the
the
gas
body
chamber
armor. Yeah, yeah.
aimer. So, you can only get the body armor there if you've already picked up the thermal goggles.
Interesting. So there was something else
Uh-huh.
I actually went back to get. I went back to get the body armor, but I also went back and got a camera,
Yep.
because I guess the camera is just something you can have. It shows up in the
I didn't
second
get it.
game.
So
just because
the camera is something that you would only, like, you wouldn't know about it. It was just like something that the only reason you know about it is because of the guide. But
yeah.
it's just meant for extras. Like, it's just meant as like an Easter egg thing where you can go and use it to find, like, you'll take pictures and get different Easter eggs, and then it's just to unlock extras in the game for like the next playthrough kind of thing.
I saw in the guide that it's the only item that will show up in the second game if you have the same data and stuff, right? And like you plug it in. And I didn't trust in reading that Kojima wouldn't try some bullshit. So I went and I got it anyway. Because the guy didn't say. They're just like, it's the only thing that carries over. They didn't say it's not necessary, whatever. That's all it was. So I went back and got it anyway. But I also got the body armor because I had the thermal goggles.
I don't know if that's the case for the Master Collection or not, because I don't know if it
Body
reads your
armor?
Steam data or not. But
Body armor part or the camera?
camera.
Okay.
Because I don't know how it handles reading your Steam save data or anything like that. But yes. So you can
Yeah.
get the camera and the body armor here. You also get a second chance to get the body armor later.
I don't think I did, but yeah.
In a different section
Mm-hmm.
towards the end. But either way, so we get to this section, and this is just my personal opinion. This is my least favorite part of the game. I don't like this tower at all.
Yeah, this tower sucks.
Yeah, so the whole point is you get into this tower, and I think, like, this, if I was going to say, like, a part that I think is, like, poorly designed or something like that, I would say that these two towers are that, because you don't, like, it's just, you're just getting hit, and then you're like, oh, okay, cool, like, that's what this is now. So you're running up, and you're just supposed to
Lots
get
of,
up.
like, I think 30 turns. So whatever that would equal.
Yeah, so however many flights of stairs, I don't know. But your point is to get to the top, and the entire time you're going to have enemies that are chasing after you this whole way. And you have a couple different ways that you can deal with it. I have seen, so, like, the quote-unquote, like, speedrunners way, the way they do that is that by this time you probably have, like, 30 stun grenades on you, depending on if you've been
Just
using
keep
them or
tossing
not.
them.
And so if you just switch between throwing, or you just throw those the entire time as you're running, and they just keep popping off, even people who are off screen are going to get hit by that stun grenade and they'll fall over. So as long as you're timing the stuns, everybody will just stay down on the ground, and then you can just climb up the ladder at the top and get out of there. Your other option is to run around with a gun and just shoot everybody, and keep going and do that.
That's what I did after 3 try. Like, it took me 3 tries to get the rhythm down and do it. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I did after.
The easiest gun to use for this is obviously the FAMAS, because it's fully automatic. So you just hold the button down, smoke anybody who's behind you or in front of you, and then keep running, and you just keep doing that. But this part, I think, is just, and we'll talk about it with the next tower too, but I think both these towers are just like really tedious, and it is, by the time you get done doing it, it's not like a woohoo, I did it. It's like, oh, thank fucking God I'm at the top, and you're done.
Can I tell you my biggest frustration with that first tower too was halfway up. It's actually, for me, almost every time is before the enemies caught up with me. You get a phone call at the door that's halfway up, and they're like, oh, this door, typically it freezes, so they open it with C4 or whatever. And I'm like, well, I have C4 on me. Let me do it. They're like, nah, but you could only do it from the outside. It's like, why? Then why do the phone call? Why let it turn green? Like, why make me stop here? That's so stupid.
It is one of the ones, so it's not a, because you can see by the way the color is the call that comes up, but when the call it's like the optional one, so you don't have to answer it, you can just keep running.
I did, and I started doing that, but the first time I was like, oh, call, what's it,
Yep, no, for sure. And then you get to the door, and then the whole tower area is if I was to, and I don't remember if they're in Twin Snakes or not, or how they handle it in Twin Snakes. I can't actually remember.
It probably isn't that bad because of the aiming. Because like my main issue with the tower is that you got guys when you're running up, you got guys coming from behind, and you got guys just in the tower ahead of you and up top. Mm-hmm. To hit the people who are above you, like you're going on a stairway and you're on one end, you're on the bottom end, they're on the top end of it, and you can see them, they're shooting at you. When you go to shoot at them, it doesn't automatically aim at them. It shoots and it kind of slowly aims up. So it's just you're wasting bullets. You got the guys behind you who are popping up at that time too, and it's just there's not a lock on that you can use to like lock onto that person then shoot them. It's more like
It should auto lock as long as you're not aiming. Like if you put Snake in the way, but then you don't use the right stick to do anything, and you just hold the button, he'll auto target to what's in front of him and just shoot.
Okay. Yeah, for some reason it was aiming at the stairs for a little while until like it finally aimed up.
The other thing I figured out is I was running with nothing in my hands. It would hit the R1 to quick pull out the gun, and I would shoot the guys behind me, shoot the guy in front of me, and then put it away again because that instant reloads. So I never had to deal. Yeah. I never had to deal with a thing. Yeah. What, in your opinion, what's more egregious? So this running sequence, which went on way too long, or in the second tower, the first turn you get shot up by a turret gun video camera, and like the second flight you have 2, and then the third flight you have 3.
I think,
and then the fourth you have 4, the fifth you have 5.
This one pisses me off more because the gun cameras, as soon as you see the first one, you go, oh, okay, it's chaff grenades. And then, like, the game is already prepared. Now, it's still annoying to run up it, but at least, like, I'm just tossing chaff grenades, and
4 of them, so.
And then I don't have to deal with it. Like, it's fine. This is annoying because you are getting hit from off screen.
Yeah.
And then being like, is that person in front of me or behind me? And then you have to figure out where they're coming from, deal with them, and then keep running, and then get clipped again, and like doing that whole thing. Whereas the other tower, even though I do think they're both tedious and annoying, as the other tower is just like the second you see the first camera, the gun camera, you go, oh, word, okay, and then you know how to deal with it.
It was a little eye-rolly because like that second tower doesn't take itself seriously at all. Because literally, like, you have 1 camera, and then 2 side by side, and then 3 in a triangle, and then 4, like, 2 stacked on top of each other, and then 5. And I was just like, that doesn't even,
really?
Like, that's just a dev. That's just Kojima going, this would be funny. Yeah, but it's not. It's just dumb.
Yeah, and again, I don't remember how they deal with it in Twin Snakes, like, those 2 towers. I don't remember it making me as mad, but I don't, it's been very long. And us playing through that has been lost, thank God, to the internet. So it'll never see. So I don't know, but yes. So we get to the top of this first tower though, and when we get to the top there, who is waiting for us but our good friend Liquid, and he is in his special Hind D helicopter, and he is ready to shoot a bunch of rockets at us and kill us. And that is when we do the most. We do this repel mini game where Snake, like what we were talking about earlier, where he runs up to the side and then he's like, "Hey,
mini game."
I wish I could just if I had a rope, I could go down here, and then Campbell explains it, and you're like, "I do have the rope because I already grabbed it," and then you go down, it's so they explain that Liquid's going to be shooting at you in like a strafing motion while you go down here, and there's also going to be steam blasting out of the side of this building that will also damage you.
Conveniently, like up the steel line, like it perfectly goes in line with the lines of the steel bars that are just like.
Yeah. Well, I'm assuming those are pipes, but yes.
Is that what? Okay, maybe it was.
Yeah. I don't think the steam is there in the easy mode.
Fantastic. So you have a couple different options here. Yeah, who knows? Because you made it through the fucking laser area just by walking. So but so this part is funny because it is meant to be very. And this part I do remember that I think they did make more difficult in Twin Snakes if I remember correctly. But it's meant to be like this, harrowing, like you're fucking trying to time your jumps and make it so that you rappel down to avoid the steam and also avoid, like, jump to the left or right to avoid the gunfire and steam sometimes, like, both. And
sorry, I take that back. We kind of skipped over the whole boss fight, so, like, yes, going down there was steam, but there's not steam on the top of the building. That's my bad.
No, the boss fight will come up in a minute.
Yeah, because the boss fight doesn't happen yet. It happens after.
You have to go. You go down. You rappel down here, then you run across, and then you go up to the next tower where the boss fight is. Yeah.
And so we get but you can just mash the B button.
That's what I did.
That's what I did.
And just rappel straight down.
Fuck that. Yep. Life was fine. I'm good.
Yeah, because it doesn't do that much damage, and so it's just like, well, okay. And so you just shoot, and most of the time you end up being okay. Like you're able just to get right over it most of the time.
It's harder to go the way it wants you to go.
It's harder to do it the right way. Like I think you end up probably taking more damage doing it the right way than just like brute forcing it. So you can just go right down. But we rappel down the side of the building, and we kill some guys that are on the bottom there, and we make it way to our next tower.
Hold on 1 second. You say killed some guys. I don't recall anybody saying watch out for these guys, so I rappelled down.
Fucking smoke you.
Yeah, I rappel down and turn around and go, bridge in front of me. I run across the bridge and get murked instantly, and I was just like, fuck off, video game.
So if you depending on how much health you have after the rappel, they'll kill you, or you can run back and then start doing what you need to do.
Well, I couldn't run back, and they just pushed me back with the bullets. Because I got like a little bit way to fall up, get up, fall down, get up.
I just used the rocket launcher that we had,
I ended up doing that, yes.
Yeah, because you can just use the rockets just to fly over there and do that without them hitting you.
I sniped, so on the left side where the railing is, I laid down, and they couldn't shoot me through the railing, but I could shoot them, so I sniped them.
Yep, and you just snipe them, yep.
Okay, yeah, too.
But we kill them, we get over to the second communication tower, and this is where you have some dialogue here where we get to an elevator, it's not working, so we call Otacon. He says that he'll be on his way, and he's like, I'll be on my way. He's like, also, I have some questions to ask you, and you're like, what the fuck ever. And he comes over, but you are running down to the bottom of the tower to, investigate more of it. When you... this is, the gun turret. I won't go back over that because we already had talked about it, but the gun turrets are in here. But Otacon gets to you as he's fixing, and he asks you if you believe that love can bloom on a battlefield, and you're like, what?
So
Whatever.
dumb.
Couldn't tell you over the intercom.
and Snake,
He had to see you in person to ask you.
yeah, and Snake answers, which I do think that Snake's answer here is the correct answer to this question. It's just like, I don't, at this point, it's just like, Otacon, I want to be like, Otacon, shut up and fix the elevator, you dweeb, but Snake is just like, I think that at any point, at any time, any two people can fall in love, like, it can just happen. It's like, that's a fact, for sure. But also shut up, Otacon. Like, and he doesn't, it becomes apparent later what he's talking about, but in this moment you're just like, so that's, okay, fair enough, I suppose. So he says he's going to go to work on the elevator, and we say that we are going to go and deal with Liquid while he's doing that. So we run up, to the top of the top of the tower here, and this is where we have our fight with Liquid. So this fight with Liquid is, we are straight up just fighting him in the Hindy. We have a new type of rocket launcher that we've gotten at the top of the tower here, and it works differently than the other one in that this one is not remote controlled. It is heat seeking, so as soon as it locks on, you press the button, and then that rocket will go right to the target and hit the helicopter, and then you are doing that fight.
You didn't talk about, though, the dialogue here where he's like, so Snake's finally come out of his hole. Are you ready? And Snake's like, are you ready? My brother's like, why do you keep calling me brother? And the dialogue is literally, why don't you ask the father you killed? I'll send you to hell to meet him.
Yeah, I'll send you to hell to meet him. And again, it's like, the thing that I don't understand at this moment is that Liquid and Ocelot both, like, really get on Snake's ass for killing Big Boss and fighting him, like, doing this whole thing. But, like, at the same time, that entire, like, as far as Snake has no, because there's actually something that happened. So earlier, Ocelot makes a point when he's comparing you to Liquid that he says, clearly the Terrible Infants Project, or they say it in French, it's the Les Infants Terribles or whatever fucking project or whatever, but it's the Terrible Infants Project. He says that it wasn't a complete failure, clearly, because you two are here and you're, successful. And so it's clear from that it's like, okay, clearly Snake and Liquid are some sort of genetic freaks, and we don't know exactly what that's about just yet. But it should be clear both to Liquid and Ocelot by this point that Snake has no fucking clue what they're talking about, and that he has absolutely zero idea about A, that project, or B, what he's involved in, or his relation to Big Boss, or anything like that. He only vaguely knows that Big Boss is his father, and that's just because Big Boss said it to him right before he died, but he knows nothing else. So Liquid gets, like, so uppity and dramatic about this whole fucking thing, and he's, like, wanting to get a reaction out of Snake, who's like, I don't know why everybody's yelling at me, but this has got nothing to do with me. But, so yes, there's the dialogue that goes into the intro, but we do the fight here. And this fight is really just, you're running around the top of the building to dodge the helicopter fire while taking your shots at him. Where about, I think, 50%-ish is Liquid starts to get a little bit more sneaky, where he, like, will hang at the bottom of the building and then shoot up, and then you dodge, and then you just shoot him as he pops out.
That made this so long. Just waiting.
It's a very long fight.
It's a lot of health too, yeah.
Yeah, Kojima loves those health bars for these bosses, man.
Yeah. And but so you beat Liquid, and he just yells "Snake" as he falls down, and then
awesome.
that's.
Can I say, this fight frustrated me. I only did it one time. I did it on the first try, which was I was very happy about, because I would have been furious to have to spend another 10 minutes with that thing flying around. I didn't just, again, the old school mechanics and stuff, like, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. There are times where, like, I would have the red hitbox and I would shoot it, and, like, it would just hit a rail, like, my rocket would hit a railing or something, and it would be like, boom. And sometimes it would actually damage the helicopter. Other times it wouldn't. Sometimes it might even damage me. Other times I was just like it. So I got to the point where I would have to wait for it to come to the right hand, like 90-degree angle. Because then I would be sure, like, everything is clear. I have plenty of time to hit it. Because if it was any on the southwest side, no clue on what that rocket was going to do.
Yeah, so I know I mentioned this in the beginning, but I think from a mechanics perspective, obviously Twin Snakes would have been a lot different, like, from all these fights perspectives and things, right? Because it's just a third-person shooter at that point. Like, it'd have been, it'd have been way easier. That being said, I think it's sort of like, again, I just think, judging Metal Gear, I think it's a better judge of this series to go back and play this one to see if it holds up and things like that. And there are parts where these tank control stuff, it's just, I don't think, again, there's moments during this fight where I am playing it and I'm like, I think Alex mentioned this last week, but it's like, man, you are clearly, like, I'm surprised this didn't melt PlayStation 1s back in the day. Like, everything that's being rendered and doing all this stuff is at the probably bleeding edge for what was on that console. But it's still just, like, it comes off very clunky sometimes, and this is one of those fights that I think anytime that you have to aim and, like, fight and do different things like that, can get a little rough, and this is one of them.
I didn't have as much of a problem with this one. The one that frustrated me the most was a Sniper Wolf one, because you're trying to get a little bit of cover with those, like, edges of those walls, but if you're ever so slightly not looking in the right direction when you pull out the weapon, then you're, like, all the way to the left and just slowly turning your gun.
Yeah.
But with a rocket launcher, like, I can pull it up, like, okay, he flies over me. I'm like, fuck it, I'm just gonna turn around with it because it goes fast enough, and I'm gonna hit him when he gets on the other side. I have, like, very little problem with this one, even hiding from the bullets.
No, it's not. So it's not. Yeah, it's not a problem. It's just because I didn't have any issues with it either.
100%.
It's just it just feels clunky for sure. But yeah, so we beat Liquid, and then when we run back down, we tell Otacon that we did it, and he's like, "Hey, by the way, it's weird, but the elevator just started working. I didn't do it. It started working. So I don't know." So you get down there, and when you get on, this is where Otacon tells you that he said that after you guys first left, he went back to run to the, like, laboratory to go snag one of the other invisibility cloaks for you, and when he got there, he realized that they were all gone. Which that's the part that I was talking about, Alex, where it's just a little bit of where it's not that he had them back then, it was that he ran back to go look for them afterwards and then found out they were missing. But yeah, so then he's like, well, that's weird. And he was like, also, another weird thing was that when I got on the elevator to test it, the weight limit thing went off. And he was like, well, I don't understand. Snake was like, well, it just happened to me. And then that's when Otacon was like, and I actually really like this part because it's one of the first times that one of the portraits, like, really changes inside the codec. But it shows, like, a way more animated Otacon. He, like, almost jumps out of the frame. And he's like, yo, they're fucking in the elevator with you right now. And then that's when we have this elevator fight scene where we are shooting at a bunch of cloaked soldiers that run around and try to shoot you.
Or if you're me, you just realize the easiest way to deal with them is just to grab one, choke them out. Because if you're choking them out, they won't shoot you or they won't hit you. And I would just grab the next one and choke them out, and the third and the fourth, and that was that. And it was very fast.
So right when I started, I threw a stun grenade, and then all of them were like,
smart.
Right as I threw it, they all three, like, were running, trying to run away from the stun grenade. So they all bunched up. They fall over, and then I took a grenade out, and then threw a regular grenade, and then they blew up and died, and that was that fight.
Smart.
But you can shoot them. You can do what Alex said. All sorts of ways that you can beat them. But we get out of this elevator scene, and it opens up into, like, this big sort of snowy area. And when we get out there, we have a call with Mei Ling, and this is where she starts talking about. You guys get into a debate about, like, what memories and where they're stored and different things like that. And Snake ends up telling her that he's like, before we you need to have more life experience. Like, you need to go and, like, live your. And she's like, well, how am I supposed to do that? And he was like, you need to go fall in love with somebody. And she's like, okay. And then they get off the phone. It's just like, solid conversation, Mei Ling. I don't like this and Snake, to be fair. It's just like, I don't. Yep, you could have cut this one out. That didn't need to be here. Right on. And so you go and leave. And as soon as you walk forward, you get hit with a random sniper bullet. And who is it but our old friend, Sniper Wolf. And we call Otacon, and he's like, hey, are you sure? Or we ask him, are you sure there isn't another fucking cloaking device out here? He's like, nope, you killed the other 4 people that had it, so there's nothing else.
Apparently damaged the cloaking devices while killing them, too. So.
Yeah. Well, to be fair,
no kidding.
It is the idea that you shot them, so yeah, whatever they were.
I gingerly choked mine out. Could have easily put on any of the 4.
Yeah.
Could have put on any of the 4 cloaking devices.
No, it's connected to their neck, and you snap their neck, so there's nothing to do about it.
They activate it by doing this little number, like a little double tap to the throat.
Yeah. But before we get off the phone, when we realize it's Sniper Wolf, Otacon begs us not to kill him, or kill her. And she's like, don't, please, she's a good person. And Snake's like, fuck you. Like, that is, like, which, this is the first time with an answer to Snake, or from Snake to Otacon, that I was like, I agree. Yes. Tell him to shut up. Like, dude, I'm going to do what this woman is shooting at me with a sniper rifle. I'm about to do whatever I have to do this. And
I thought this was funny too. Even the introduction where they're like, are you sure there's not another cloaking device? And as a viewer, right, we know it's Sniper Wolf because we see this thing through the eyes of the scope, and she shoots him, and then Snake falls. Like, we're not in first person. We see Snake fall down. So it was a weird bit of writing and dialogue to tell us something as an audience we already knew, because that's.
But it's more so the characters being informed, right? Because the characters don't know, so it's like, it's the problem. Like,
yeah, but we are the character. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we're the character, and in this moment they switch perspective, and we're the audience.
I mean,
it was
we're
just
the play. I don't know. I think
it was odd.
Like that part, I think it's tough because there's a ton of media that's like things get explained that we already know the answer to, but we're watching for the character's reaction to certain things. But
anime, you're just talking. It's just anime.
No, there's plenty of shows that do it too.
Yeah.
I don't think there's very few shows I think that are written from a perspective. We actually had talked about this before, where like early Attack on Titan is written from a perspective where the characters know more than the viewer does, and it's great.
Yeah.
But there's not a lot of shows or games or books or whatever that do that. But yeah, so Sniper Wolf ends up hacking into the codec call and interrupts, and it's basically like, yo, motherfucker, I'm gonna kill you. Like, it's high past time. Like, I never miss my target. Blah 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 blah. And you're like, okay, and you have a couple different ways that you can do this fight. So you have the.
I take it Preston the hard way.
No, I did the easy way.
Oh, okay. I did the easy way too.
I'm assuming that Preston probably did the way that I'm about to that I'll describe second. Okay. But
I did
the normal way. The normal way is you would just repeat the first fight, right? You just pull out the sniper rifle, shoot at her, and then you can do it. She hides behind trees, and so she just jumps between them. You snipe them, and then move on. We also have in our armory this time a remote-controlled rocket launcher.
Sure do.
And you can just use that to guide the rockets to her location while hiding behind a cliff. And she can't do anything to you, except watch these rockets come right at her, and you can destroy her that way.
Half the time she would turn around, and I would literally feel bad because I was driving it right into her ass. Like, that's every time. I was like, come on, video game.
It's funny because you see, she tries to run as it's... Like, I think the logic for the game... I don't believe that the game plans on you using that rocket launcher here. Like, I think it's your plan. It's like, oh, it's Sniper Wolf. I gotta pull out my sniper rifle. Like, you just did there. I think they're planning on that. But when you use the Nikita launcher, like, it treats it like she's being aimed at, so she tries to move, but you're like, I can also move this bullet, quote unquote, and I will follow you, and so then she just has no choice to just take the explosion.
I think it's only when you do it in front of her. It's like when they see, like when a soldier sees you, it has a little exclamation mark pop up. It's one of these other bosses. I did the same thing, and it's like get an exclamation mark as soon as they see the rocket in front of them and they try to deal with it.
Yeah. Well, so the other one does plan on you using those
Okay.
and then can shoot some of the. I don't know if it happens in easy, but the other can shoot those slower moving rockets and shoot them out. Sniper Wolf cannot do that. She has no choice but to just take this
it.
rocket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
She didn't even.
And
Go ahead, Preston.
I was gonna say it was just me in the right corner because I was like going on that little bottom section, just like looking like let's get all the boxes we can, all the items, and then I found a little cubby hole in the right side. I'm like, okay, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna shoot the rocket. I'm just gonna scout the area, find out where she's at. I didn't really find her. The rocket ended up hitting her without me noticing, and I saw her life bar go down. I'm like, oh, we're doing this the whole fight because I have like 15 of these rockets.
Did you not get the box around her body wherever she moved?
So you were using the lock-on one?
Yeah.
I was using the remote control rocket.
You can use the lock-on one, and it will achieve the same result, but you can use
Wait.
the remote control.
No,
one just
I was
to-
using the remote control one, but in first person mode.
Oh,
Yeah.
sure, yeah.
I didn't notice
if you
that,
go,
yeah.
if you go in first person, it shows a green box around her body. I just
again-
flew the whole way in first person.
I again forgot that the rocket has its own first-person mode.
That the Nikita
So,
launcher does.
if you're
Top
if you're
down.
if you're on the right hand side, Preston, and you're in first person, she won't run between trees. She'll stay where she's at because I don't know why, she just keeps shooting in your direction, even though you're just moving the rocket. So the green box is just behind a tree, and you just
She
guided
did
over it.
move a
Yeah.
couple
But that's-
times, but the rocket was in front of her when that happened. So
But that's why I think that it's a logic bug where because if you do this fight normally, when you aim at her,
yeah,
she will then try to run
Yeah,
and
from the first one.
move to like try to
Yeah.
fuck it up so like and go forward. Whereas I think because you're using the rocket launcher, it's counting as you aiming at her. So she has to move, but there's also she can't see where you're at, and so it's like I can't shoot, but I know something's aiming at me, and so it just bounces, and so you're just like following her like I'm gonna get you. Like it's just one of those like things.
I don't want to say I loved this fight, but it was a nice reprieve to just kind of cheat. It's kind of like
Felt like
Elden
you
Ring and
gamed
other
it?
stuff sometimes.
Yeah.
When you're just like I'm fine with gaming this sometimes because there are other times in the past where I feel dicked over, so I'm fine with this, right? Like
Yeah, this one was just. It felt like they forgot that the Nikita launcher was in the game when they were designing this part, and so like you use it. Just it totally feels like the game just like oops, like there's nothing they could do about it. And I think this is fixed in the way they do the Sniper Wolf fight in Twin Snakes. However, because it's a third-person shooter,
be easier.
it's still easier anyway. But I don't believe that you can do it the same way in that. But so no matter how you choose to do it, we end up beating Sniper Wolf, and this is where we get some backstory on her, and also some more Otacon dialogue. But she tells us about her backstory, so she tells us about how she was basically, like a child of war, or like the orphans of war or whatever, and she grew up being a child soldier who then transitioned into, just continually killing and getting better and doing things, up until Big Boss is the one who rescued her, and that's how she came to join Foxhound in the first place. And her and Snake sort of go back and forth about how he doesn't hold any ill will towards her because they're just soldiers trying to do their jobs, but also he thanks her for sparing Meryl, and she's like, well, it's not Meryl. I wasn't trying to kill Meryl in the first place. Like I never kill somebody who's not like my target anyway.
I just put 350 caliber rounds into her limbs and just hope that she
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
Just
bleed
Anakin
out on
Skywalker her.
own.
Yeah.
Right.
But they go back and forth about that, and she basically says like, I've been waiting for this moment this whole time. Like I've just been waiting for somebody to put me down, more or less. And so we tell her that we're going to grant her wish, not before Otacon undoes his camouflage and runs up and is like, "But I loved you." Blah, blah, blah. To which she completely ignores him.
She kind of turns to him and is like, but
No.
like, my sniper rifle though.
You guys
My
watched
true love.
you guys watched The Bear, right? So like this latest
Yeah.
season, this was that Carmy scene with his like mentor. Otacon runs out. He's like, "I loved you," and she's like, "I don't think about you at all." Like that's
Yeah.
exactly what
Yeah,
that
yeah.
was.
She's like, "Bring me my rifles," and then he brings her a rifle. And then he, Snake puts the handkerchief back over her, and then we grant her wish by fucking giving her one right to the dome, and we start to walk away. And Otacon basically is we tell Otacon that he should just leave. We're like, "Hey, dude, just leave. Like, escape, get out of here. It's gonna be okay. Just peace out, because." Like, either I'm going to stop this thing, or the U.S. is going to come through here and bomb this whole island to nothing. So, either way, you need to get out. And he's like, no, I'm going to stay. I need to find something worth fighting for. I'm going to stay and help you, blah, blah, blah. And as we start to walk away, we have the classic action movie moment where Otacon goes, like, what are you fighting for? Like, why are you doing all of this? And Snake's like, if we make it out of this, I'll tell you. And Otagon's like, okay.
They also had a line right before this where Snake's bending over with a handkerchief, right? Because we had her handkerchief from earlier. We put it down. Otacon's like,
Oh, yeah.
what are
I
you
remember
doing?
that.
And he was like, I don't need a handkerchief. And Otacon's like, why? He's like, I have no more tears left to cry.
Yeah.
He said, I'm giving it back to its original owner, and I have no more tears to cry, or whatever like that. And it's like, okay. But then, yeah, leave it. It's just like this classic action movie moment where I know there's, like, it's the most, like, action hero thing where he's like, if we make it out of this, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Like,
Because it like fades
I
to
mean-
black
Movie
there
liner.
too. Like it did,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so as we are out of that, Otacon leaves, and we can run around this area and sort of pick up some supplies. And if you do, I don't know if both of you did,
I did.
but if you do,
I'm
you come
following
up
the guide,
on
so
the
I
wreckage. Yeah, if you run up on the wreckage of the helicopter, you see a parachute out there.
Oh, I did not catch that wreckage, yeah.
Yeah. You immediately can call Campbell about this wreckage, and Snake is basically like, yo, I found the wreckage of the helicopter, but there's a parachute right next to it. And he's like, well, does that mean that Liquid survived? And Snake's like, I mean, he couldn't have used this parachute to get out of it, because the second he used it, he'd have gotten chopped up by the helicopter blades. He was like, he's like, I'm sure he's leaving this as a message to me that he survived, but, I don't know how. So we can go through this area, and this is where we make it into the furnace.
I'm sorry,
uh,
real quick. Before we go into the furnace, there's a bunch of those buildings around that you can check. Fuck that one building with the mines inside of it. That sneaky fucking building. None of the other buildings have mines. They all have cameras. But this one building, that top right corner, has fucking mines. And I get hit by one, I'm like, okay, well, they fucking with me. There is like 7 mines in this tiny ass
they're all in
room.
there.
Like, you did not need that many. 2 or 3 would have covered the entire room. But you're just like plastering it. Like, and I couldn't remember how to pick them up, so I just had to walk back through it.
Yeah.
Great.
So following the guide too, on the opposite side, you get a third cargo box, like a third brown box.
Yep.
you
I
can
did find
hide
those,
in.
yeah.
And I didn't realize that in this what the guide said, like once you have those, if you use it in the back of a truck, that is how you fast travel between the game.
Oh.
So
Yes.
So box A goes to the armory and the tank area, B is the nuke area, and C is
Wow.
where we are now. And
That's
you
very
can
cool.
literally just I thought that was cool too.
Yeah,
It would have been
that's very
nice
cool.
to like, I don't know, introduce
Somebody
that
tell us
earlier
that
into the
somehow,
game,
yeah.
but whatever.
Maybe you can use the box
believe-
to get to the other area.
I believe
Yeah.
that those come up when so all of that is stuff that it's explained to you after you beat the game as like a new game plus kind of thing.
Gotcha,
Because there's
gotcha.
other items that you get to, like a bandana that can give you unlimited ammo, and like other fun Easter eggs and different things like that. But yeah, so we get into the furnace area, and this area is mostly, just normally you're just making your way through it until we get to the elevator that's meant to take us lower in. And what do we have but a repeat of the elevator fight, except they're not invisible this time. They're just extra tough genome soldiers.
Somebody really liked that idea when they came up with it. The
Yeah.
invisible one, they're like, "Hey, it worked." They were like, "Let's use
Yeah,
it."
they were like, it's even better a
immediately.
second time.
You really like beat 'em up games, so we're going to give you those elevator fights.
Yeah.
Yeah. This one is, I think, a little bit easier because you can see them a lot better as opposed to them being invisible. So you just, you know where they're at, so you just shoot them. But as we get done with the elevator fight and there's no more enemies, we get a call from Miller, And he basically goes on to explain to us that he's pretty sure that Naomi is a spy. And he bases it off her backstory, the way that she was talking about how she worked with the FBI and the different things that she was doing. And he does it by outing the fact that Edgar Hoover was a crazy racist who hated everybody, which is a fact, but also he was like, it would be impossible for somebody of Asian descent to be on his staff. Like, it would not have happened. So he's like, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
He just would have been racist to him. But he would have been upset.
No, I don't think he would have, because
racist.
that's when we had the Red Scare. So anybody that was communist, like Chinese or everybody,
fair enough.
they were gone.
He goes on, this is part of this conversation that I actually like, where Miller is giving this reasoning, and you're like, yeah, no, this is solid. Yeah, that's actually like that's very true. Yeah. And so he's like, hey, I'm still trying to work this out. Like, I don't know for sure, but just be careful. Just keep your fucking eyes on her. Be careful. So we get down to the bottom, and who is it? Oh, I should mention, by the way, to Alex's point last week, this sort of clears this up. We have killed every single boss that we've come up to at this point. Like, people are dying. Like, Sniper Wolf is now dead. Well, sure. Like, but I'm saying, like, people are starting to drop now. And so... Yes. Keeping in with that same theme, we fight Vulcan Raven here for the last time. And
none of these assholes better come back in the next game or another game.
No, I'll just tell you, no, they do not. No. So Vulcan Raven is... he has his giant fucking crazy machine gun shit on, and you can fight him two of different ways. It's up to you. You either can use the Nikita launcher to try and chase after him with rockets, which works for the first half of the fight up until he starts speeding up, and then it's usually he usually will see the rockets too early and just shoot them down, and then there's nothing you can do about it. The easier way is just to use the Stinger launcher because it moves faster. And it locks onto him. And you just do that, and it's really just
I did it a third way.
Yeah, same.
Because I could not hit him with the Nikita launcher.
The issue I have with that is that since the map doesn't move with the rocket, it's hard to tell exactly where he's at. So I did most of the battle with the rockets, and then after a while when he got faster, I'm like, I'm just having a hard time with this because I picked up an item while I was running around, which was the C4. I'm like, ho, just drop the C4 down, and when he walks over, just explode it. And that's what I fucking did for the remainder.
He and I just ran, we ran in a figure 8 around two different boxes, and I would drop C4 and just had him chase me into it.
You can do that. You can also use the claymores that we've been picking up. If you leave claymores on the ground, he will just and then run over them and explode that way. But you can use the Stinger launcher if you use that one, because it can track him, like because of the heat seeking. As soon as he comes around the corner, you just press the button the same way you would do with the helicopter, and it just goes right after him. Like, you don't have to do anything.
So we kind of skipped over some of the dialogue here. I think it's like as soon as we go into it.
Yeah, there's a lot of...
This is the frustration.
Most of the dialogue's at the end. He doesn't have a ton at the front. It's just him saying that he's going to put us to the test versus, like... He believes in Liquid, but he's like, I'm going to put you to the test and see if you're truly as good of a warrior as they say.
Yes, so there's a part here, because I looked it up just because, like, this is the Kojima dichotomy, right? We go from the Sniper Wolf dialogue of being, like, pretty emotional to the last call where they talk about J. Edgar Hoover, which is, like, fairly historical and, like, accurate, like, makes a lot of sense. To then this, where he's literally, like, he's talking to Snake and he asks about, like, the Eskimo Indian Olympics. So he's like, yeah, I know what it is. You must be a real threat in Muktuk, the eating contest.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you're right, but I'm really better at ear pull. And I'm just like, God, what are we doing? Like, Kojima, like 5 minutes.
Those
segments.
are
like,
pulls.
What are we...
Those are look how smart I am flexes. Like, I have this unknown fact kind of thing that I can pull out of my pocket. Yeah.
Insane.
It is,
and like,
I think...
neither of you look... Inuit or because like it's the limitation of the hardware back in the day, right?
Naomi does not like Japanese either, but okay.
No, and they even say like
Well,
that's
she's
part
half,
of,
but yeah.
Yeah, sure.
that's part of it too. And I forget what the line was, but Vulcan Raven's talking. He was like, "Oh, you must have like Eastern blood in you or something, or Japanese
Yeah.
blood in you or something like that." And I was like, "How do you tell?" Like I thought he was just very American, like this whole time.
Well, he knows that he's part of the same thing that Liquid's part of with the genetic experiments between him.
Yeah, I
and
guess you're right,
Big
yeah.
Boss and all that other stuff. But then, so that's where that comment's coming from. And then they do mention at the beginning of the game that Vulcan Raven is, I believe he's Native American or he's native
Yeah.
of some kind, whether it's from
Canada or Alaska
Canada
or something
whatever.
like
But
that.
He's from
yeah,
Alaska.
he's native or indigenous. But yeah, I think it's Kojima's attempt at trying to ground these characters in some sort of reality where he's like, well, if he's indigenous, then he would know about these things, so he's going to bring this up. And it's like, I understand the vision, Kojima, but like, it just comes off as weird that these two characters are talking about Inuit ear pulling when
Because like you're not going to talk about that among friends at a bar, right? Like why would
No.
you bring it up here in this fight? It's just out
Yeah.
of place.
it makes the part that makes sense about him saying like him talking about his relation to Liquid and like all this other stuff. It's like, well, that makes sense because he's trying to fight him and like do these things. But like him being like, you know, what do you know about this? It's like, well, I don't nothing, and I wouldn't because I'm not indigenous anyway. So
But
like
he
I would,
lived
but
in
yeah.
Alaska and is a husky rider and has his whole back.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. Is I think it's their attempt to ground these characters and be like, they would talk about these things because they should both know about them. It's like, while they both should know about them, there isn't really any grounding to say that they would talk about them in this moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is weird. But we start the fight and you kill him any which way you want to. And when we destroy him, this is where Vulcan Raven basically, this is the big sort of exposition dump where he gives us props for being able to kill him, and he's like, "Yep, you're definitely related to Liquid. Like, I can see that, firsthand." And he says that that clearly this world is passing him by, and that he has no desire to live in a world in which him and Liquid exist because he doesn't agree or believe with the way that they were brought about. Like, obviously being genetic experiments that are basically mutant freaks compared to him, a regular person. And so he's like, I don't want to be in this world. It's got nothing to do with me anymore. And he's like, because you've, granted my wish or whatever, he's like, I'm going to give you a hint. And he lets us know that the DARPA chief that we saw die earlier in the beginning of the game was actually Decoy Octopus. So he had drained all of the blood from the original DARPA chief after they had gotten all the information out of him. Changed his body, turned himself into the DARPA chief, and then that's who we met in the cell. And so it's interesting that then he also died.
That's why he had maggots all over him, because he was drained as much sooner.
Yeah, so that's why, and that explains the body that we find later, right? Is because now it's like, well, that makes sense. The DARPA chief has actually just been dead this whole time, so now we know why. And so he goes on to sort of get. This is I think if there was ever a Mission Impossible moment in this game, it's probably, if it's not the elevator scene in the beginning, it's definitely this one.
Yeah.
Where Vulcan Raven basically orders his ravens to just devour him and kill him, or end his thing. But as he's doing this, it basically is Snake is walking away, and it's like in slow-mo, but it's overdubbed by the conversation that they were having before Vulcan Raven decides to, have the ravens eat him. And he's basically like, you're never going to find peace. Like, this path that you're on is a never-ending battle. Like, you're always going to be in war. You're always going to be fighting, and the souls of your enemies are always going to be haunting you. Do you hear me? And he's like yelling and doing all this other stuff. And Snake's like walking away while all this is happening. And it's just, Jesus Christ, it's like the most like action movie. Like, it feels like in this moment the same way that Tom Cruise like walks away from a bad guy that's like, you'll never be free of me, like that whole like it's
Feels
that's
like
exactly
a
what,
RoboCop or some type of type of
Yeah.
like action movie to where like the villain's dead on the ground like bleeding out and like the good guy's walking away and he's like fuck you, I'm not gonna get you taken.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what it feels like. And you can tell that Kojima's like, that's my fucking moment. I did it.
You did.
Yeah. But right after that, we get a call from Miller, who's like, yo, I fucking figured it out. Naomi Campbell is not Naomi Campbell. She's lying. That's not who she is. And Campbell pops up and is like, huh? What's going on? And Miller's like, fuck. Okay, well, I guess we got to bring him in. And so Miller basically explains all of his investigation and is like, that I don't know who that is, but that's not Naomi Campbell. Like, I don't know, or that's somebody's assuming that identity.
She's a spy.
That she's a spy from somewhere. I don't know, but like he was like, you need to go arrest her like right now. And then Campbell's like, well, wait, because she's actually like, we can't like sort of pop this top just yet. Like we have to wait.
She's important.
Like
for
just
the
give me
mission,
some time.
is what he said. Yeah.
And like like for the mission, and then like we can figure it out afterwards. And he's like, just give me some time. And Miller and Snake agree that that's what they'll do. And then we are on our fast track to the end of the game from this moment. So we said that we were immediately stopping here. You crouch, you hit save, you turn the game off. I believe all three of us did that this time.
I didn't crouch, but I saved.
Sure. Well, you crouched when you called it, regardless of what you wanted to do.
Okay,
but either way, yes. So we are all three at the same exact spot. Nobody has played further. Yeah. Nobody has done anything. But that's it, man. So that's where we're at. So like we were saying, a lot more story this time. Definitely some military sort of history stuff mixed in with a lot of Kojima's anime stuff. So yeah, where are you guys at? How you feeling?
Yeah. As of now, I'm super into it. The story has kind of started to win me over. So like,
I don't know how he does it. It's so irritating because there's things in this game that are so like I have been fighting with myself. Like I'll just be honest. Like I won't spoil it, but like I have been hovering on I'm going to assume a way lower rating than most people probably think that I would give this game, but I have an internal fight happening where I'm like, but some of this is cool as fuck though. Like, and you get it's so irritating.
It is irritating because there's plenty of things that like I'm trying to remind myself it's the limitation of the hardware and the timing of where like I do get pissed. Like I rappel down, turn around to run across the bridge I clearly have to run across, and they just hide enemies off screen and wipe me out. Right? So there's on purpose, and there's plenty of things where I just stick my hand up to the air and I'm just like, why? Right? But the story.
I don't even know if it's on purpose. Sometimes it feels like that. It feels like this. It feels like sometimes it feels like the maps like. It feels like Kojima has made concept art of an area, right? Like a full screen, like a board, if you will, like for these old games, right? Like before a screen transition. He makes a full, like he puts a picture up on a board, and then he's like, okay, if this is a military base, I would put people here, and then I would put people here, and then I would do this. Like this is how I would make this believable. But then from a gameplay perspective, we are forced in the like top-down perspective. And because it's not an NES game where it can show us the whole fucking screen, it's like more focused and locked in. Now it's just like, oh yeah, these people are off the screen hitting me, but it's like there is times like the tower definitely feels like it's on purpose, right? But like the repelling tower part feels like he goes, well, there would absolutely be people here. Like it doesn't feel like it's malicious. It feels like he designed it that way and then was willing to uncompromise on his vision of making a fully believable base that then you just as the player get fucked by.
Yeah, and there are things like I ran backward, as I said, to open up some of the doors as we got the level 6 card, and I got to the room where you're not allowed to use the guns, and it's like the nuke area, so you have to be careful on like the shit you step on and whatnot. And man, I died in there like 4 times. Like, it is equally infuriating no matter which direction you're going, no matter how many items you have. But then, like, I go through some of these story beats and I roll my eyes at like the bad dialogue, but when I take it as a whole, I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm kind of into the story.
Yeah.
Like, I'm kind of into it. I'm interested
Like,
to
there's
see
parts of
where
it that
it
you're
goes.
Like I roll at Vulcan Raven a little bit, but then I'm like, but Sniper Wolf is actually like a good character. Like, that is a tragic story. Like, I can see that.
Yeah.
And then like even Gray Fox, from a perspective of like when you get more of his backstory, you're like, yeah, right on. Like, I can see, I get that. Like, that's a bad story. Like,
I will say, like, this game. Actually, I don't even know how to say this. Like, this game has to be taken as a whole collective. Because if you were to sit down and watch, like, a Let's Play for an episode, and say you came into episode 3, right? Maybe you miss episode 1 or 2, you would be like, this game sucks. These characters don't make any sense. Like,
Yeah.
And you might see one character, you might get lucky. You might see the Sniper Wolf thing and be like, oh, that's really good. Or you might get unlucky and you would only see, like,
The bad part,
the
yeah.
Vulcan Raven. You'd be like, this is dumb. So the game really has to be taken as a whole, because if you parse it out, I think that's where I go, I don't like some of these things. But if I take a step back and look at the story holistically, I'm like, okay, I'm into it.
and there's also a part of it that, like, so I have not played this game since I have, like, whenever I finished Metal Gear Solid 4. Like, when I went into Metal Gear Solid 4, I had only played this one time. Like, I had only played each game in the series one time. I had never replayed any of them or anything like that. Now, going back to it after having like knowledge of how the story ends and different things like that, there is parts of this game, and this is part of the problem that I'm having when I'm like trying to think about how I'm going to judge it at the end, is because there are parts of this game that Kojima clearly knew where he wanted to go by the time he got to 4. So he was putting things in here as like little, like, haha, like, I gotcha, or like these like foreshadowing things that if I was going into this with no knowledge, I would be like, this is stupid, or like, this doesn't make any sense or whatever. But then there's times, like, there's other bits, and there's some that is still stupid, but then there's other parts of it that you're like, oh,
it's a ballsy thing to do.
No,
and you don't know you're gonna have 4. You don't know that you're gonna have 4 games.
Well,
that's
dude,
insane.
at this point, you've only made 2 NES games for Metal Gear, and then you made Police Knots, and that's it. There is no indication that Konami is going to keep giving you money at any point in the future at all.
Right.
And you're like, no, like, and it's, yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know how he gets away with some of this shit, but then also, like, there's this stuff here that's like, it is a ballsy move, and it's going to be one of these things where, like, I think the way that I'm going to do it is that I can't rate it with the knowledge of the future, because it is unfair to see how that game, like, but also it's part of it because it's clear if he's putting that in the PS1 version, like, this isn't the Twin Snakes remake. He didn't change anything, like, or this isn't like a remaster that happened later where they add dialogue. Like, this is the PS1 version of the game. Mm-hmm. So it's clear that he meant it to be in there for a reason, and he was just, hopefully I get to pay it off. And it's like, I fucking guess so, man, but Jesus Christ. So, yeah, I don't know. It's just interesting. But yeah, I agree with you.
Where you at, Preston?
Yeah.
I'm surprisingly liking it. Like I mentioned before, not a whole lot of stealth in this like I thought there would have been. I think the writing is mostly good outside the cringe. But I think the cringe, it's just immature writing, and for Kojima, where he's at, his age, and where he's at, like, his experience in game writing, it kind of makes sense to me, right? I'm sure now, as we've seen in other games going forward, there's still a little bit of horniness and corniness that goes into things, but I feel that he probably lightens up a little bit on it, but we'll find out as we go through, right? We're gonna figure it out. But it's just, when you watch a Quentin Tarantino movie and you can just tell, man, this motherfucker loves Hollywood movies. This is
I
kind
thought
of
you
the
were
same
to say
thing.
feet, but yes.
Yeah, Sifi, yeah. But like you can just see and like feel it like in some of these like action shots, some of these like when they're getting like the serious dialogue and like the camera angles, like the background, the snow, and the way it kind of goes with it, and the little music cue hits in. Like he's doing a very good job with showing his love for like action cinema and kind of putting that forward towards it, because you can like anyone can say that they like RoboCop and make like a fucking shooting movie, but he's like no, I like 80s 90s like action movies, and like I'm gonna kind of base
Yep.
I'm gonna make my own story, and then I'm gonna kind of build it based off of what I love, which is those type of movies, and I'm seeing it there. I love those type of movies, and I'm appreciating the quality that I'm getting outside of the cringe. But yeah, it's the cringe just makes it just unique to Kojima, and I think it's not, I don't want to say like endearing, but like I kind of like it. It's funny. It's something for me to giggle at a little bit, while I'm playing this more serious toned game.
Kojima was about 32 when he made this.
Really?
Game.
I was expecting him to be in his 20s. Holy shit.
How old do you think he is now?
Fuck, I was
Now-
going to ask. Jesus,
But-
how old is he?
but-
He's,
here's the thing.
he's 61. He doesn't look it.
Yeah,
He
No,
looks-
he does
yeah.
not. He looks like he's in his
No.
40s, maybe 50s.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
Konami money clearly has kept him in tip-top shape.
Yeah.
And that blank PlayStation check he got. But remember, is that Kojima has had this story boiling around in his head for most of his
Right,
life.
he's got Metal Gear 1 and 2 already
And-
down, yeah.
Yeah, and by this point he's already had Metal Gear 1 and 2 already done. Make no mistake, the way that this transpired outside of Rising was his plan the whole time.
Sure.
And so 5 and Rising are the ones that were, a little bit of outliers, although I think Rising is, perfect for it. But yes, part of it does feel like there's a little bit of my memory of 2 is very fuzzy. It's the one I remember the least, so I don't remember how much cringe is in there. 3, my gut says that there's basically no cringe, mostly because of, we'll get there, but mostly because of the story it's telling. 4, I remember has the only time I remember there being cringe is when Otacon is on the screen.
Which one is Snake Eater?
3.
I've recently watched someone play through that. There is plenty of cringe, I promise
So,
you.
are all of these games in chronological order? Like, I know 5 is
No,
prequel,
so-
but like, okay.
So one is here, and then 2 is after the events of 1, but some things happen, and obviously the cat's out of the bag is that we don't play as Snake, we play as Raiden, but that's because, that spoiler has been out there forever. There's nothing anybody can do about that, but I will touch on that because I do think it's a very interesting part of that game, and it's very cool that they subvert expectations like that. 3 is a prequel, and that is you're not playing as Snake in that game at all. You're playing as somebody else, and then that goes back to like Cold War era, so it's like way back, and then 4 flings you to
In front
like
of 2.
in front of 2, but it's probably, if I remember correctly, it's like 15 years after the events of 2-ish.
So not. I mean, nothing we do about it now because we're doing it the way we're doing it. Is there a reason you chose to do it this way?
The release
versus,
chronology?
like,
Yes, because this way,
story?
the way you're thinking of would have been absolutely miserable. Because Snake Eater is a game that was so. Kojima and Metal Gear go hand in hand with the PlayStation life cycles in a way that would make playing this game miserable. So like
After playing. Yeah.
this game is at the tail end of the PlayStation 1 life cycle. So you're really seeing like this is the pinnacle of what the PS1 can do. Metal Gear Solid 2 comes out around ish like the big hype part of the PlayStation 2. And so it's like, yo, look at all this new shit we can do. Like this is crazy, blah blah blah. Snake Eater comes out towards the end, and much like Final Fantasy X, it's like a swan song for the PlayStation 2. It's like, yo, we are pushing the PlayStation 2 to the fucking edges of what it can do. Like, this console's going to explode if we keep going further. And then, same thing with the PS3. When 4 came out, the PS3 was like, I don't know if you guys remember, but like, up until Metal Gear Solid 4 came out, like there wasn't really any sort of exclusives that had launched on the PS3 that really like
They started off
showed-
slow, yeah.
well, yeah, and it was also $600 fucking back then, which was like probably $1,000 today. But it's like it was so expensive, not a lot of people got it. But then there was also basically no fucking games on it, and so it was like hard to justify like that price point for all of this magical hardware that they were talking about. 4 was the first game where when people saw that reveal trailer and saw what that game was going to look like, everybody went, "Holy shit!" Like, this is fucking doing something. And so if we had played Snake Eater first and gotten a bunch of extra information on everything that's happening and then went back to this game, it would feel absolutely miserable to play.
Gotcha. Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Plus, this is how the story is meant to be seen, right? Like, this is how
It's like
everybody
Star
got
Wars.
it
You're
before.
going to go through 4, 5, and 6, then go to 1, 2, 3, and then go to the last thing
Yeah.
you really want to. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep, for sure.
Little Star Wars knock there, I get it. So.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, tune in everybody next week for our final. We are finishing, yeah.
Yes.
We're finishing.
Yep, that's
like,
it. There's
final
2
part.
sections left. These 2 sections, obviously, because of the end of the game, like they are a little bit meatier anyway. But yes, there is only 2 sort of like I know you guys are looking at a guide. There's only 2 more sections left on this guide, so that's it.
Okay, yeah. So tune in next time. We will finish off this game. It's on to me. To Preston, you have a little bit of Metal Gear Solid break until we come back for
right.
Christian's next
Hey,
one. But
I'm enjoying it so far, so we're good.
I didn't think I was going to. And for a minute, I don't think I
Definitely
wanted
didn't
to.
think I was going to,
But now I actually am. So
Yeah.
there's, we can talk about this. I think we can talk about this offline too. It's just gonna be one more of those things where Christian's gonna be like, "All I pick is beggars. All I pick is beggars. I don't have a
That
bad
is not
pick."
how I feel. I'm telling you, that's not. You guys are going to be shocked.
I
at where
like
I'm-
this game, but I'm not going to give it a really good score.
No, yeah,
No,
you'll be yeah.
but it's not beyond good and evil.
No,
So,
it is not.
there's
Prince of
there's
Persia.
that.
No, yeah, there's not much games that are though. To be fair,
Yeah.
that game stands in a class all of its own.
There's a reason for it, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thanks for hanging with us, everybody. Check us out next week as we finish this up. And with that, Preston, you know what to do.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to another episode of The Testing Room. To catch up on past episodes or to check out the newest ones when they drop, follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your favorite podcast. If watching is more your thing, check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/@thetestingroom, or watch us live on twitch.tv/testingroomlive. To leave comments or ask questions, you can follow us on Instagram @testingroompod, leave a comment on YouTube, or send them in to testingroompod@gmail.com. See you next time.